When we look at images that depict the founding of America, and we have a few here, one thing's consistent. In most every picture, every person is male. Where were the women? Didn't they do anything to advance independence? Well, yes, they did, says John Blundell, author of Ladies for Liberty, a new book that celebrates 20 American women who fought for freedom. You've also published comic books about Ayn Rand. So I'm puzzled, though, because you're writing now about American women, and you're a British guy. What's your deal here?
I got into all of this because about 5 years ago I wrote this book, Margaret Thatcher, A Portrait of the Iron Lady. And that led to a lot of speaking engagements around the United States. And I was shocked at how many of those people would say really banal things like, what a pity we never had a Margaret Thatcher in our history. And I'd be, wait a minute, American history is stuffed with great women, far more than any other history in the world.
Well, I'm ignorant, too, because I didn't know our history was stuffed with most of these great women. So let's quickly go through some of the list. Mercy Otis Warren.
She was known as the conscience of the American Revolution. She wrote great plays, great poems, satirizing the Brits that cheered up the Patriots enormously. But I think most importantly, she helped create the Committees of Correspondence, which was essentially the email of the 1760s and 1770s, the way that kept all the patriots, the revolutionaries, in touch with each other and what was going on with the Committees of Correspondence. And that idea was hatched by her and her male friends in her front room.
And that helped us overthrow your ancestors.
That's
so
correct.
that was good. Then you mentioned the Grimke sisters.
They were Southern royalty. They were very wealthy, very well connected. They could have lived a life of luxury in Charleston, but they thought it was immoral, the idea that a human being could own another human being. And they moved to Philadelphia and then New York and finally Boston, and were brilliant strategists, brilliant at carving up the market for their abolitionist message.
And later on, they led a group of women to vote. In Lexington, Massachusetts, the votes weren't counted, but they voted anyway 50 years before the 19th Amendment. Bina West Miller, a businesswoman.
She's one of my favorites. Women weren't insured in those days. They were deemed to be too high a risk. And she essentially invented life insurance for women. And within a few years had hundreds of thousands of women insured.
Madam C.J. Walker.
She was born in the South. She was born free, just. She invented hair products for black women and was the first woman in the history of the world to make $1 million without a husband, without an inheritance, or without a government issuing a license or something like that. And she enfranchised thousands of black women throughout America as her agents, who are selling these black beauty products, who probably made about 6 times what they'd previously been making as maids or washerwomen or whatever.
Laura Ingalls Wilder and her daughter Rose Wilder Lane.
Yes, of course, the Little House on the Prairie books, and of course that became a huge success on TV and was President Reagan's favorite TV show. Lastly,
a more recent example, Taylor Caldwell.
Great novelist. Her novels were so big that Hollywood couldn't digest them, and even though virtually every one of her novels was optioned, and essentially her novels led to the invention in the 70s of the TV miniseries, all of which emphasized liberty and individual freedom.
She's talked about personal responsibility and free markets from a pillar of iron. The budget should be balanced, the treasury refilled, the public debt should be reduced, the arrogance of the generals should be tempered and controlled.
And that's only about half. There's a lot more in that paragraph as well.
She was unusual. Well, let's bring on a woman who wrote the foreword to your book. Nicole Neily is president of the Independent Women's Forum, a group of feminists that support free markets and limited government. You wrote in the foreword, self-determination is a virtue. Individuals should be allowed to pursue their own ends, free from coercion. This is not what I hear from the American feminist movement. They want protection because you women are weak and helpless.
Exactly, and I actually consider that quite an insult. In my mind, that is not what feminism is about whatsoever. Feminism should be about empowerment. It should be about not being dependent on anyone, not on a husband, not on a father, and certainly not on the government.
Had you known about the women in John's book?
I didn't know about most of them. I thought John did a tremendous job, and What I really love is that all of these women did great things without Uncle Sam's help, and in my mind, this pushes back against the Nancy Pelosi narrative that we need the hand of government to give us a leg up. I mean,
and why has that dominated the feminist movement in America?
I'm not really sure, but we hear over and over again from people like Senator Gillibrand from New York that all these programs are going to be all these programs that women care about are on the chopping block, and that presupposes that everything that women care about, health care, education, can only be provided by the government, and that's absolutely ridiculous.
It also presupposes that there actually is something on the chopping block, which there never really is. Who are the female heroes of freedom today?
Women like Jenny Beth Martin from Tea Party Patriots, Stacey Mott from Smart Girl Politics have done a terrific job of organizing. There have been tremendous entrepreneurs. The woman who has created the Sunlight Foundation that has done a lot of work on government transparency. The creator of bone marrow transplants. The person who created immunosuppression therapy that you can use to actually do transplants. Those are all women. So women have made tremendous contributions, and they haven't needed the hand of government to do so.
Thank you, Nicole Neily and John Blundell. Coming up, a champion of freedom who celebrates himself to the tune